Welcome to my channel. Fazza poem. Subscribe now. There are words that never reach their destination. They linger folded between pages of time, breathing softly in the dark. Sheikh Hamdan's letter lay hidden beneath old journals. Its ink faded, but its heart still alive. She found it one quiet evening, when the desert wind was still and the moonlight trembled across the table. Her hands shook as she unfolded the paper, its scent carrying 1,000 sunsets. It wasn't addressed to her, and yet every word called her name in a language older than sorrow. The first line whispered, "If you ever find this, know that I once loved in silence." Her breath caught, and for a moment, she wasn't the princess of Dubai. She was a woman standing before the ghost of love itself. The letter began like a confession, carved from wind. "I never wrote to be remembered," Hamdan had penned. "I wrote to survive what memory couldn't bear." His words belled with quiet ache, every stroke of ink a wound reopened, every pause a prayer that never reached its end. He spoke of a woman who moved like dawn and disappeared like dusk, whose silence had been more faithful than the promises of time. Reading it, she felt the distance between love's truth and love's duty, that thin, invisible line where hearts must bow to crown. The candle beside her flickered as if trembling with the same grief she now carried. Not jealousy, but the unbearable tenderness of understanding. Hamdan had written of longing that didn't fade, only transformed. "She is in every verse I write," he confessed, "not as her but as light, as the space between what I can say and what I must hide." Each word was a revelation disguised as restraint, each sentence the ache of a man who had loved too deeply to forget and too loyally to speak. The wife's eyes glistened as she realized the cruel beauty of love, bound by honor, how even devotion can become exile when born in the wrong moment. Yet she didn't close the letter. She read on, drawn not by pain but by the purity in his silence, the honesty that time had failed to bury. As she reached the middle of the page, his voice seemed to rise from the ink itself, soft, trembling, yet eternal. "If you ever see me smile," he wrote, "know that some part of it still belongs to the memory I couldn't keep." Her heart broke quietly. This wasn't betrayal, it was truth made human. The desert outside sighed, the wind brushing against the palace walls as though listening too. She pressed the paper to her chest, and for a moment, she felt his soul divided between two loves, one of the heart, one of the world, and she wept, not for what she found, but for the depth of what he had lost. The room felt infinite. Every corner echoed with the weight of words unsent. She could almost see him there, young, uncertain, writing beneath a silver sky, his heart full yet silent. The letter had never been meant for her eyes, yet destiny, in its quiet mischief, had chosen her to carry this truth. She traced her finger over his signature, Fazza, written softly as though he feared the world might overhear. It wasn't just ink, it was love's final breath before surrender. And she understood then that some silences aren't meant to be broken, only honored. She folded the letter slowly, reverently, as though tucking a soul back into sleep. The tears on her cheeks glowed faintly in the candlelight, pearls born of compassion, not pain. She didn't hate the woman whose shadow still lingered in her husband's words. How could she? That love had shaped the man she now called her own. The poetry in his eyes, the gentleness in his voice, the ache behind his calm, all of it had roots in the story she now held between her fingers. She smiled sadly, whispering to the night, "I forgive what your heart once remembered." Outside, the moon drifted higher, silver and solemn. Somewhere in the desert, the sand shimmered as if the earth itself had heard her. Hamdan, unaware, sat alone in another room, the same room where he had once written that letter. His eyes lifted to the horizon, sensing a change in the air, a peace he couldn't explain. Perhaps souls can feel when truth is finally understood. Perhaps the universe softens when forgiveness replaces silence. The wind passed through the open window, carrying with it the faintest sound, not of words but of release. Later, when she placed the letter back where she found it, she didn't hide it again. Instead, she left it open, beneath the soft light of the moon, beside his poetry books. She knew he would find it, and she wanted him to know. She had read it, she had felt it, and she had let it go. There was no confrontation waiting, no bitterness to bear, only peace, the kind that comes when love is seen for what it truly is, eternal, unpossessive, and pure. That night, when Hamdan returned, he saw the open letter and froze. The air thickened with memory. But then he saw her, sitting quietly by the window, her gaze gentle, her heart unafraid. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Between them, the letter rested like a bridge built from honesty and grace. He walked closer, his eyes glistening. She reached out and placed her hand over his. "You loved beautifully," she whispered. "And you still do." And in that moment, for the first time in years, Sheikh Hamdan realized, even lost words can find their way home when they are met with love instead of judgment. Her tears fell silently as the night deepened around her, not from anger, but from the tenderness that comes with knowing someone's truest pain. She looked at the letter again, tracing the curve of every word, feeling how much of him lived between the lines. This wasn't just ink, it was the language of a heart that had spoken only in restraint. She realized how heavy it must have been for him, to love and not confess, to remember and not reach, to write and never send. The desert outside seemed to listen with her, holding the echoes of what had been unsaid for so long. She closed her eyes and let the letter rest upon her heart, whispering softly, "Love like this doesn't end. It only changes form." When dawn finally came, she walked out to the balcony, where the first light touched the dunes. The letter, now folded once more, rested beside his poetry, no longer a secret, but a truth finally set free. Hamdan stood behind her, silent, the wind carrying the scent of morning between them. She turned, met his eyes and smiled, the kind of smile that forgives without needing words. He understood. The letter had returned not to haunt, but to heal. And as the sun rose above Dubai, its golden rays wrapped around them both, two souls bound not by perfection, but by grace. In that moment, Fazza's lost words were no longer lost. They had simply found the way back home. Later that night, long after the palace lights dimmed, and silence reclaimed the corridors, Sheikh Hamdan sat alone, where he once wrote that letter, the same desk where his heart had learned to hide behind poetry. The ink stains were still there, faint but faithful, like memories refusing to fade. He thought of her reading it, the tears she must have shed, the forgiveness that bloomed quietly between the spaces of every unspoken line. A soft wind brushed past the window, carrying her scent, her warmth, her understanding. He smiled, though his eyes glistened with the kind of ache that feels both beautiful and unbearable. For the first time, he wasn't burdened by what he never said. Love, he realized, didn't need to reach her hands. It had already reached her heart. The letter, once a symbol of longing, had become a bridge between their silences. And beneath that moonlit sky, Hamdan whispered to the wind. Some words were never meant to be sent, only felt.